Hello and welcome everyone to another exciting episode of Let's Ride an Adventure. I'm RJ Kerr. I am your host for this live stream, seeing as it's my channel. So today we are going to continue working on what had been intended to be the second adventure in this series, but is rapidly becoming the uh, first full campaign that we're creating in this series. Um, right now, that campaign takes place in a domain of dread that we are creating of our very own that features sort of this the ruins of an over large city that cover the inside of this sort of crater that is now flooded. And so we have sections along the rim that are above water, and much of it is below water. We have a central island now in the middle that is formed by this sort of spire citadel. And then we have a number of islands floating around on the outside. Some of those made of derelict ships, ghost ships, others of are earth motes frozen in time from the cataclysm that created this domain of dread. And We decided to use a different story structure for this particular adventure. Let me share my screen here. Um, in which we're using the story circle structure for this to kind of chart this whole campaign, with each segment being its own adventure or adventures. They may have a couple of them in each section. And those start with you, need, go, search, find, take, return, and change, where you, uh, as we've mentioned previously, is effectively our expositions where we kind of set the stage, the characters find out where they are and what's kind of the basics of what's going on, and we plant them in the world in which they exist. Need is our first adventure, the one that we are, in fact, going to be working on today or continuing to work on today. And this is where we establish what it is that the characters are going to be searching for. What is their goal throughout the course of this campaign? Go is where they take that information, they actually go forth, they make plans. Search is the trials and tribulations that they face. Find is a twist, a turning point where they find what they're looking for, but there is new information. And then take is where they take that new information and do something with it. And return is our climax, where we decide the outcome of the campaign overall. Will the characters survive and escape this domain of dread, or will they succumb to it? And then change is, of course, our the result of the outcome of the adventure. What it is, the change that our characters have wrought in the world. And so I don't want to spend a ton of time kind of going through that structure again, because we've kind of summarized it at the beginning of each of these. But I would like to start working on our need. Now, in the last two sessions, we spent some time um, working on a map, a basic map for this initial adventure. And so we're going to put that map aside for this time, and we're going to focus on return to focusing on the writing of it, of the finishing the writing the adventure. I'm a firm believer that you're kind of working on everything at once when you're creating an adventure. Yeah, certainly there's places to start, and you're going to start with what you know, and you're going to build out from there. But you may hit places where you need information that you haven't gotten to yet in the adventure, and so you're going to need to put down what you're working on and move over to create a different portion of it and build again what you know, creating that into the world, and then you come back to your first part when you're ready to pick it up, when you have the answers that you need. And so that's kind of what we've done here, where we started writing the adventure, and then we made a shift over to the map to kind of get a feel for how the rooms connect and how all these pieces and parts interact with each other. And now we are back to finishing writing the adventure. And of course, we'll still need to finish the map, but we'll go back to that later, now that we've kind of have the information that we need from it. So just to refresh our memories, um, this beginning adventure, is an adventure where the characters are kidnapped by a superior force from a faction led by an aboleth. They are briefly enslaved, but freed from their enthrallment by the intervention of an agent from a Slod-led faction. The characters must then escape the aboleth's lair or be re-enslaved. And we've kind of changed this to an aboleth's um, excavation site. So not necessarily its lair, but more of one of the annexes of its cult. And then during the course of the adventure, they discover the aboleth is seeking an artifact, and this is the artifact, the big artifact, the thing that the characters are going to end up seeking for themselves as a way to escape this domain of dread. And this artifact of great power could give the aboleth godlike control over the domain of dread. In fact, it could give godlike control over the domain of dread to anyone who possesses it. And the characters at this point will come to realize that the artifact also represents their best chance of escaping the domain of dread. That's one of the pieces of information that we kind of need them to find. And so we'll be working that into the various rooms. And we'll work some of those clues in probably as one of the last things that we do, kind of as we go through with the treasure, as that information is valuable. But in the meantime, we have fleshed out a fair chunk of this. We're using a 5+5 adventure structure for this, and so that means we've got 5 sort of action rooms and 5 thematic rooms. And we've built out 4 of those action rooms, if you will, where we have a challenge in the form of the characters needing to escape their imprisonment. We have a fight with some just straightforward fight with some cultists in the mess hall. We have a reward in which the characters find a room that has equipment that might be useful to them since they have been captives and they are unlikely to have that equipment. And we've built out an ending encounter, including a ritual that the characters might need to interrupt that's going on in process. And we also know that we're going to have a room where the characters make a discovery, an important discovery. And this is where one of the places where we're going to put information about the artifact, but this is where we're probably going to put the biggest lump of information about the artifact and its potential power in this laboratory space. And so we may work on that today. The other rooms are going to be more thematic, and so less focused on encounters and more focused on building atmosphere and sort of giving characters time to kind of react to their situation as opposed to just going through a series of challenge after challenge after challenge. So let's go ahead and start with the equipment room. Now, the equipment room is, just kind of reference our map here, is a space nearest kind of their initial room. They're starting the enthralled pen, if you will. We have our equipment room, and it would be full of things that they would be used as part of the excavation of this area here. So I would envision that would be mining tools and the like. So at this level, of technology, those mining tools are probably things like shovels, pickaxes. There's probably spars in there to kind of, like crowbars, that kind of thing. I lost my train of thought. Crowbars, that kind of thing. And so just stuff that ends up that's possibly could be repurposed as weapons. Maybe even, something to be repurposed as a shield, if you will, something along those lines. And so we're kind of putting some stuff in there that they can equip themselves with early on, but is certainly not as good as real equipment. Oh, no, it looks like we've got a comment in the chat here, so let's see. Jonathan Frost says, it might be interesting to have the characters return to this map at the end because the aboleth is about to discover the artifact here. Something to jot down for later. That's a great idea, especially if you can reuse maps and repopulate them later on. It saves so much time. It really does. Maybe find occurs at this location as well after the aboleth's forces have completed their excavation. Yeah, potential. That's certainly got some potential. Something we might want to come back to later and save ourselves from having to create an additional map. It's a great idea, Jonathan. Thank you. All right. So the equipment room. Um, I don't imagine that this door is locked, considering most of their workers are enthralled slaves. So we probably don't need that. So we probably just need a description to start. Description. This room is a store room for various pieces of mining equipment. It features a vast supply of shovels, pickaxes, pry bars, and the like. Characters can use much of the equipment in here as improvised weapons, such as a shovel might serve as a two-handed mace. Yeah, so improvised weapons, certainly stuff that the character's not necessarily proficient in, although you could have the errant character who's proficient in shovels. um, that'll be a case-by-case basis, but the idea is some basic stuff so that when they get into their initial scrapes, they have got something to fall back on. It's not just their fists. They got a little bit of extra power to them. We need to put some thematic notes in here. Thematic notes. This room is it's dirty, dank, and dingy. It smells of briny, wet earth and water drips. Water seeps from the walls, forming muddy puddles on the floor, giving ourselves just kind of a little bit of atmosphere in here. Not a very clean space, I wouldn't think. Likewise, I don't think the excavation site would be a very clean space. Probably very dirty. Probably very probably a little bit of a labyrinth. Kind of again pulling up our map here. We kind of make this whole space the excavation site, where we have lots of twists and turns and loops and dead ends and what have you that the players might get, or the characters can kind of explore and get turned around in. So let's work on writing that one now. Let's see. Thematic notes. We'll start with that, and then we'll come back to our description. And I'm, just arbitrarily distinguishing between the description that's kind of like the mechanical description of the space. Although, kind of a mechanical description of the space. And then thematic notes being just kind of some of the sensory details in here. I mean, you don't necessarily have to make that distinction. I'm doing that in these thematic rooms just to make it easy for me to kind of reference those as I play. You know, I try to avoid giving myself big blocks of text if I can, because they're hard to parse through when you're kind of in the moment. So, thematic notes. Let's see here. These passages are low, barely taller than the characters themselves, and especially tall characters might have to stoop. The floors, the ground is muddy and pocked with puddles. The air is stale and tinged with the smell of salt and sweat. Imagine with all the physical labor that goes into digging these passages, that aroma would kind of hang in the air. I also can't imagine they're letting the enthralled workers, clean themselves too often. And isn't there a skin condition that comes along with being enthralled by an aboleth? I think that there is. Let me look that up, because that might affect the smell as well. Let's see here. Aboleth. Let's see here. Communicate to. Let's see. Magical disease. Yeah, skin becomes translucent and slimy. Creature can't regain hit points unless it's underwater. That's good to know. Okay, that's useful information. Okay, yeah. So there is a skin condition that comes along with being enslaved for extended periods of time, and so you get that kind of translucent, slimy skin. So I imagine that there'd be traces of that slime in places, old dried patches. Well, not even dried because it's so wet and dank in here. So just like old smears of it, sweat, streaks of slime are smeared in patches along the walls from where enthralled workers have rubbed against the rock and dirt. And finally, I'd say that probably say the air is humid, stale, and tinged. Yeah, there we go. Put that Oxford comma in there. Let's be right. All right. Okay. All right. So we got some thematic notes in there. Let's put our mechanical description. It's one of the nice things about these thematic spaces is they come together pretty quickly, because you just need to have a feel for what the rooms are like and a couple notes for yourself. And you kind of put that down, and that's really all that you need for some of these spaces, because they'll become stages for other kinds of dramas. Let's see, description. The active portion of the excavation. Oh, hey, Amanda. Welcome. Glad you made it. Don't worry about being late. I mean, come on, we're all just hanging out here, so no sweat. But I'm glad that you're here. Thanks for chiming in. All right, so anyway, description. The active portion of the excavation is, let's see here, is a labyrinth. I can never, ever spell that word. Come on. Labyrinth. There we go. Is a labyrinth of criss-crossing tunnels and muddy dead ends. Let's see here. A few. We should probably have some workers in it, right? Right? We don't want it to be completely uninhabited. That just feels weird if the players are the only, thralls. So let's say a few enthralled workers pick at, or I should say dig at the walls, expanding passages in places. And we should just make them commoners, I think. All right, expanding the walls in places, the passages in places. They probably largely ignore the characters unless accosted, in which case they react with hostility. Not necessarily violence, but hostility, I would think. Because I'm kind of imagining, there's an H in there. I'm kind of imagining sort of these single-minded, slack-jawed, almost zombie-like in their movements, but not undead, workers that are just kind of going through the repetition of their day with no other kind of thoughts in their head. And that, they probably, don't think about the fact that somebody might be escaping. They're not looking for, escapees. They're not trying to inhibit the characters. But if the characters were to interact with them, they might get, frustrated or upset that they aren't allowed to, they're being stopped from doing their work. And so they could respond angrily, maybe with some basic, some low-level violence, a swipe, a push, that kind of thing. Certainly not an attack. Just enough to kind of give us a little more atmosphere here. Cool. All right. Let's get down to the cultist quarters. Description. Well, let's take another look at our map. So, with the cultist quarters, that's this area here. And we kind of have this central common room, and then we've got the sort of branching rooms off, which I assume are, for the most part, communal bunk rooms. I imagine that the cultists are not, for the most part, don't have private rooms. This one and this one might be private, might belong to the cult, leader and a lieutenant. But that these rooms would be bunk rooms. So we probably want to distinguish between these. So what, A, B, C, D? kind of thinking. We just kind of go counterclockwise along the edge here. Seems to make the most sense to me. So we can distinguish between them. Let's see here. This space is a let's see here. Let's just say a central common room. Forms a hub between 4 sleeping quarters. 5A. I don't just need to stop trying to capitalize 5. 5A, 5B, 5C, and 5D. Let's see here. Areas 5A and 5C are communal bunk rooms for cult members, housing several bunk beds and personal trunks. We should say and trunks for personal storage. Areas 5B and 5D are private rooms belonging to the cults. Let's say to the cultists in charge of this excavation. 5B belongs to the second in command, and 5D belongs to the warlock that we have, to the TK cult leader. Let's see here, to TK cult leader, because we are naming him, we just haven't yet. Cult leader. Each room is sparsely furnished and contains few personal belongings. Yeah, because we don't necessarily need the cultists to have a whole lot, although we'll probably come back and put some treasure in there. It's a good place to have it. But, you know, I imagine that when you are, I should say, everything that I've learned about cults would suggest that when you get, you know, this deep into a cult, i.e., you're helping them, you know, with secret excavations, that a lot of your personal wealth goes over to the cult and stops kind of being your own. So I would imagine that there isn't a lot of personal effects in all of these rooms. Yeah, so I don't think that we necessarily need a whole lot of sort of bric-a-brac in there. But let's get some thematic notes. Still, I wonder how members of an Aboleth cult would decorate. Because I don't necessarily mean that like they would want to make the space look pretty, right? Like, but there is a human compulsion to kind of make home spaces, you know, reflective of the creatures that live in them, whether it's innate or not. I mean, whether it's intentional or not. And so, You know, would there be graffiti on the walls? Would there be ranting, raving notes that have been posted up? Would the walls be totally bare? I mean, just absolutely empty. Um, that's a possibility and unusual and noteworthy. What do we think? What would I mean, I this feels very. It's not as chaotic as like the slotty cult would be, right? Because slods are slod are they're creatures of pure chaos. So I could see their cultists having just ranting graffiti written up on the walls, just scripture written out line by line, carved in by hand into the stone. I can absolutely see that, but there's a level of order to the aboleth's chaos. Um, there's certainly a a madness here, if you'll forgive the term. Um, but there's but it's a more orderly one. So I wonder how these rooms would look. I think they'd be simplistic. Yeah, I think they would definitely be simplistic in their nature. They would um, hmm, simple furniture. Um, I kind of wonder if the walls would just be bare rock, unadorned, or maybe there's little niches that have been carved into them for small for idols and sort of a series of shrines. Like one shrine isn't quite enough. Like there's a personal shrine for everybody who kind of lives in these things to the aboleth, and there are maybe handmade idols that in what downtime the cultists get, it's there's almost that compulsion to work on it. I could see that. I could see this being a very compulsion driven sort of, you know, cult, religious, pseudo religious movement here. I could see that it being kind of the latent effects of the enthrallment, even though the cult has been kind of released from that to some degree. There's that kind of Stockholm syndrome that goes along with it. I could see that being the case. What do you guys think? What does that make sense? Hmm. Let's start with the furniture. I really think it's sparse, simple furniture. Um, Furniture in each of these rooms is simple, functional, with little to no adornment. Um, let's say little to no adornment in design, in basic design. So we might add some. Um, let's see here. Moribund. I like it. It also adds a creepy atmosphere. Thank you. I I think so too. And I like I don't know. I like my cultist layers to be a little creepy, don't you? Uh, it just seems like they should be. Um, and again, I guess there's nothing creepier than happy-go-lucky cultists. All right, so yeah, with little to no adornment in basic design, um, the walls are bare stone, but have but are dotted with hand carved niches, hand carved niches that each form a small personal shrine to the aboleth itself. Each niche shrine contains a different idol of the aboleth. Each idol is a work in progress by its owner, who finds it each night as part of a compulsive ritual of prayer. Okay. We could also probably say then these rooms are lit exclusively by candles that fill these shrines. Let's see here, Jonathan. Ooh, what if the idols are all sitting in a puddle of water or maybe slime? Ooh, yes. I like that too. Definitely the slime. Each of the shrines is coated in a layer of slime taken from the cultist's own skin, with the idol soaking in a small puddle of it. If you're going to go, let's see here, Moribund, if you're going to go the goo route, you can have them ritually coat the idols in their own blood, giving a brown coated texture from repeated use. Yeah. You could definitely go blood if you wanted to. I personally, I like the slime thing because it's unique to the aboleth's situation. It's a skin condition that develops as part of being enthralled by an aboleth, according to the monster manual at least. And I guess that would be the expert, wouldn't it? So I think that makes it a little more unique, because blood is something that would show up, I think, in a lot of cults. If this was more of like a demon cult, I'd say, yeah, we should go with the blood route. That's more in vein of blood oaths and sacrifices and that kind of thing. But I think for this, I think the slime off of their own skin is just as effective. And yeah, so I think that's what I'm going to stick with on there. I like the suggestion though of ritually coating the idols over and over again. I think that it kind of makes each one of them even more personal and unique. I've got kind of a very kind of Lovecraftian kind of vibe going on in my head for this, and I like that we're getting a little dark with this. I don't know. I like my adventures a little dark and spooky, and I am a big fan of grimdark settings. But that's just a personal thing. Okay. Let's see. I think we're gonna skip over the laboratory for the moment and keep along with these thematic rooms, because we've only got 2 more of them left. We still haven't figured out what number 9 is. Does this slime have a faint phosphorescence? Ooh, Moribund. Does this slime have a faint phosphorescence? I like that it could, as it builds up, let's add that to some general features. Slime. Members of the Aboleth cult excrete a slime from their skin as a side effect of their devotion to this aberration, which I'm misspelling. Aberration. There we go. Aberration. Slime. Wipes off. Let's see. The slime sticks to most surfaces, though not enough to function as adhesive, and has a faint phosphorescent glow, but is otherwise harmless. I like the faint phosphorescence. That also means that we should have little streaks of that phosphorescence going on in the excavation site, because we talked about the streaks of slime that are smeared in patches along the walls. You can just say are smeared along the walls. From when the old workers rubbed against the dirt and rock, the slime glows faintly in the dark. Cool. I like that detail. That just adds a layer of creepiness to it that just, chef's kiss. Well done. Good suggestion. Okay, so let us carry on. To that end, we should probably say that for lighting, let's see here. Unless otherwise noted, all rooms are lit by dim candlelight only. Yeah. Just because I don't think, since the creatures that we have populating these don't have dark vision, I wouldn't say that it's lightless. Although we could certainly give them dark vision if we wanted to. Something to think about. But let's say that most of the rooms are lit by this kind of pale candlelight. I think still gives us that creepy vibe, and gives us dim lighting, makes it hard to kind of see here. Adds to the creepy vibe. Okay, so let's continue. Let's say description of the harbor. This area is a harbor that leads to the inland sea. This is the only entry and exit point to the let's see here, to the cultists' excavation sites. Characters who make it here find the boats necessary to escape. Probably the rowboats to escape. Because that is the ultimate goal, is for them to get out of there, right? So make that clear and easy. So let's say thematic notes. This should be different than everything else. The air should smell fresh comparatively. Let's see here. The air here smells as fresh as the open sea. Even this world's dull, overcast sky seems bright and open after so long in the cramped underground tunnels is repetitive of the cramped tunnels of the excavation. We say gulls can be heard overhead and seen swooping to pick at probably bodies floating. Well, we'll just say jetsam and floatsam. Jetsam and flotsam. Flotsam? Spell that right? Yeah, there we go. Jetsam. It's an A, not an O. Jetsam and flotsam. Floating in the water. Because I know this is a domain of dread, but I still feel like there are seagulls there. The jerks that they are. For those of us who grew up on naval bases will recognize, or by the ocean will recognize what jerks seagulls can be. What are the condition of the boats? Yeah, that's a good question, Moribund. What's the condition of the boats? I would imagine that they are functional, though probably not great condition. The idea is that if the players have to escape by water, that there's a means for them to do that. They find the rowboats necessary to escape. But you're right. Let's give this some notes on the condition. The boats are functional, but in poor working order. Each has minor leaks that cause the craft to require bailing every hour spent at sea. Yeah. Are you thinking that, let's see, Moribund, are you thinking that this would be a skill challenge to make an operational boat and escape, or a means to end the session? It's more of a means to end the this part of the adventure. It's an escape route, because we've already got plenty of other challenges that the characters need to overcome. And so if we're thinking about this as our story structure, if, in this particular adventure, this is what I would call a reactive adventure, where stuff is happening to the characters. And they get to make decisions based off of, adjusting to that and adapting to it. But they didn't set out to be kidnapped by this cult. They got kidnapped and then they became enthralled and they were enslaved, and now they're escaping after they've been saved by this Slod agent, which we're going to need to build in here at some point. Now that I think about it, um, but but so the characters have had to escape their prison cell. They've probably had to fight some cultists. Um, they've had to re-equip themselves. They've made some discoveries, and they've had this climactic encounter in the ritual room where they've had to battle cultists and a warlock, and keep them from manifesting an avatar, their Aboleth master, in real time. And so I don't want to get to our resolution, which is the harbor, and end up in a situation where the dice just don't go the player's way, and now they're stuck, and they've got to swim for it. Because if there's anything chasing them, and they have to swim for it, and the cultists who are part of this cult that have access to an aboleth, right? They've got access to things that can go in the water, and I wouldn't say they would summon the aboleth, but they can probably swim, right? So I don't want it to end up in a swim chase challenge. If there's going to be a chase, we want people in the boats. We want to have some action economy to use, that kind of thing. Although the characters could surprise us and decide to swim for it if they want, but I want there to be the means for them to end this potentially. Simple enough. They've gone through a lot at this point, and these are first level characters too. So I don't want to throw too much at them just yet. So we'll give them a little bit of luck in the case of the boats, but we don't want. But to that end, I like having the boats that are not in great condition, so that they can row out and they can escape. But these aren't things that they're going to necessarily keep without having to repair. Now, they might later on have a skill challenge to see if they can repair the leaks in the boats and keep these rowboats if they wanted to. That might be something we might consider. But I think that just for getting away, this is just our exit. Cool. All right. Well, let's see. Do we have time? We might have time to do one more, or at least get started on it. Let's see. Let's check out room number 9, because we don't have a lot of detail for that yet. We were saying that room number 9 was just kind of this space down here, kind of in between the harbor and the ritual room, just kind of an antechamber. So I am trying to imagine what they would use that for. Probably, I could see, cultists arrive, they've got supplies, they need to make their own rites to, their own prayers and rituals and what have you, as they enter this now to them sacred space. So that might be kind of a mud room, if you will, a place where they can unload some of the supplies, a holding area. So there might be crates and barrels in that space. It might be a place to hang, wet, wet cloaks and what have you, so they don't get they can dry before they get tramped through the ritual space. It might be a place for them to change into more ritualistic vestments. So yeah, we're gonna call it the cloak room, I guess. Description. This room serves as an antechamber between the work space, that is the docks, and the holy space, that is the ritual room. And actually, I should call this the harbor, not the docks, so we stay consistent. is a place to temporarily store goods unloaded from the boats, and for cultists to hang up their wet gear and change into ritual vestments before entering their holy site. Thematic notes. Let's see here. Orderly crates and barrels line the walls. A small section of wall has been made clear and fitted with pegs holding wet rain gear and holding wet rain gear. Let's see here. A boot brush rests next to a bench used for next to a bench where adherents can adherents can ready and freshen themselves. Moribund. Storage would be logical, but it could also be a place for inspiration, where by walking through you're in awe and worship or fear, banner, iconography, war trophies, etc., like a hallway that leads to the throne room. Yeah. We should definitely have some iconography in here. I think I like that. I like that because I think that you're right. This is kind of a transitional space, right, where it's a blend between kind of this functional area of the harbor and then the very ritualistic area of the ritual room. And so it probably needs some elements of both in there. I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right on that regard there. Let's see here. The walls. Let's see here. The sections of wall that are visible are carved with sweeping images of a mighty world-eating aboleth. The artwork is skilled and awe-worthy. So we can, just make that note to ourselves in there. So when we're describing it, we can give it the gravitas it deserves. And so, it's so that we can have kind of the walls. Let's see here. The sections of wall and ceiling. I think they would probably sweep. It would swallow the whole room to that effect. And you just kind of have the crates and barrels along the sides, down along the floor. Not big, tall stacks of them, just stuff that needed to come in kind of right away and get out of the wet. What about a passage that looks like you're walking to the mouth of an aboleth? Okay, yeah, that might be the carving. That might absolutely be the carving on there, walking into the mouth of an aboleth. An all-worthy. Let's see here, giving the sensation of walking into the mouth of an aboleth itself. Boom. Cool. And I think that is where we're going to put a pin in it for the night. We're at our time. Jonathan, oh wow, that's wild, like being swallowed by a Lovecraftian whale. Yeah, I like that. That's a good way to put it. Oh man, You guys have come up with some amazing ideas this evening. Thank you so much for all of your help. I love getting this to spend this time with you all, and getting to just kind of have this creative space where we can just come up with ideas and make something that's truly just a lot of fun, and hopefully will be a lot of fun to run. So thank you again so much for spending tonight with me. If you've enjoyed this content, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. All that kind of stuff helps the channel, helps me keep doing this sort of thing. And thank you all again so much for participating. Helps keep me inspired. If you like my content, you like kind of how I run games, and you want to see how I actually run a game, please come check me out at startplaying.games/GM/RJ Kerr, spelled just like my name here on the channel, and jump into one of my sessions, see what it's all about. Thank you so much, and I hope you all have a great evening. Just a reminder, we're going to be off next Monday since it's the week of Thanksgiving in the U.S. here, and so I'm going to be spending the time with my family. But we will pick up again on Monday, December 2nd. So I will see you all then. Have a great week, everybody, and I'll see you soon.